Good evening to all my subscribers, and thank you so much for supporting the channel over the last year. It has been over a year now since I published my first video. In fact, I think it was March the 27th. This video hopefully will go out the day I actually make it. The day today is March the 25th. I'm hoping it will go out tonight or tomorrow morning, whenever. As I say, I'm trying to put videos out as soon as I can actually make them. Um, in terms of the rover videos, we are very much near the present day. Everything has been staggered. The rover's MOT occurred very recently, and I had to keep that very quiet. I did tell one person that things had been done, and I'm chuffed to bits. I'm still chuffed to bits that it's on the road, and there are a few more videos coming up with that on the run up to the Pride of Longbridge. Suffice to say that things are going very smoothly, fingers crossed. In terms of the Focus, I'd say we got the MOT done on that car. It has been a little bit quiet in terms of actually working on the car, but the truth is there's not much to go wrong at the moment, and I thought I would put a few videos out more about advice on what you need to watch out for, and that is what I pride myself on with that car, because the community as a whole has been based off Facebook groups from this time forward. However, I am hoping that this channel, particularly for my Mark 1 community, I'd say my Mark 1, it's not my community, it's our community. I hope the Mark 1 Focus community really does grow now, because we've had a few members here and there who've got little tiny groups poking around in the last couple of years, but nothing concrete. And I still think when it comes to car shows in general, it's one of those things that it hasn't quite got to an age where it's appreciated. Unlike the Rover 45, where I think it's appreciated because Rover is no longer around. And a lot of their cars were classics the moment they were born, like the Rover 75. That was a classic in terms of how it was designed. Not necessarily in a good way, though, in terms of attracting young people, but nevertheless, these things it kind of worked out that way. But the Mark 1 community is growing, and I really do hope to grow it even more, to help it grow even more by using my YouTube channel as like a community hub. And that's how I vision it. I really do hope that it works. I have been putting the feelers out on a lot of the Facebook groups, trying to gather more and more subscribers and viewers. More or less viewers. I just want people to view these videos and to be kind of aware that these are very simple cars to work on. You can do it yourself. You know, the stuff that people actually really give up on is subframes, rotten subframes, steering rack's gone, rear subframe's gone, bottom arm's rotting, bolts all seized at the back. You know, these sort of things really do put people off, because they're not easy jobs. I will tell you that, they're not easy jobs, but you have to take it a step at a time. And I do think it's worth, if you are thinking about keeping a Mark 1 Focus, that you have access to another car. So at least you have a car to commute in, get to work, etc. And then you have the ability, with a few tools, to start doing some work on your own car. And that's everything my channel is based on. Giving help and advice is the number 1 thing that I've been trying to do from the very first video. If you watch the first video I did, which was supposed to be a blog for my channel, the channel was supposed to be a blogging channel. I think it's gone away from that a little bit, and it has become a car channel on its own. We now have over 600 subscribers, which is something I just never would have guessed ever. I have got some shows coming up, which I have already advertised, and I hope that the shows are just a little bit of a springboard, because I can't tell you how much I love the car, Focus Mark 1 as a car. It's always going to be close to my heart because it's my first car, and I couldn't have chose better. I was very close to choosing a Rover 600 as my first car, and then my dad told me that is too big a car for your first car, smaller please. My dad knows nothing about cars. My dad has no interest in cars. But he quite liked the smaller Ford Focus. And Ford, it's a name that has been trusted through many years. Ford have definitely lost their way with their cars in general. And I think there's so many videos now analysing the collapse of Ford in Europe, and I do think that's going to happen, unfortunately. They're just not appealing no more, and I think they have completely lost their brand identity in Europe, which is basically, in a nutshell, the average man's car that drives very nicely. They're sporty, they're attractive, but they're cheap, they're affordable. And then say they're average, it doesn't sound very good, but they are better than average when they're made well. And the Mark 1 Focus is an example of Ford probably at the peak. I don't think the Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 1, Mark 2 Mondeos were sort of getting there, and the mindset of Ford was changing, in particular the design element of that through that golden age. And I don't think Ford's golden age was in the 60s and 70s. Okay, I wasn't born from that time. I'm a 90s kid. But I don't necessarily think it was their golden age. I just think they were getting going. And I think the brand identity stuck, you know, from your Escorts, your early Fiestas, the Cortinas, Granadas, it stuck. And I think they've really pushed and cemented that through the 90s and the noughties. The problem is, since about 2010, they've started losing their way completely. The Mark III Focus for me, I've driven one, I learned to drive in one, I would actually own one, but they were starting to lose the European feel. That feel that European Ford owners understand. When Ford tried to appeal to a global audience, you cannot make a car for a global audience and retain that identity of being a Ford. And as I say, what is a Ford? You're looking at an affordable car that is really pleasurable to drive, nice to look at, and relatively, I say simple to maintain. I don't think manufacturers have been doing that for many years. I think everyone has gone the same way, and that is a shame. But I do think there is some element of the Ford DNA that has been copied throughout from the 50s, 60s, all the way to the noughties. The 2010s, nah, they lost their way. They lost their way completely, and all the old technologies withered away. All the old last vestiges of the old Ford company have just gone. And the people that run Ford now are complete idiots. That's all I've got to say about that. Where does that put the Mark 1? It is probably the last great Ford they made. Controversial opinion there. What have you got to say about that? Do you think that I'm correct by saying that? Because let's have a look at every single Ford that has actually come since. The Mark II Focus, well, that was basically on a slightly differentiated Mark 1 platform, slightly stretched, longer wheelbase, same engines, but not very attractive at first. The Mark II facelift, much better. I'd have one. I'd have one at a reasonable price. And I think they got it slightly right. And I think the Mark II Focus was the last vestiges of the old company. I think the Fiesta Mark, I'm trying to get it right now. We've got the Mark 6 Fiesta. I think there was bits of that I don't like. I've never really been appealed on that car, but there was still some really good elements about that car. Fun, nippy, sporty, and absolutely easy to steal. And then you have, hold on, we've got the Fiesta Mondeo. Mondeo Mark 4. Ooh. I think the Mark III Mondeo was the last great Mondeo. I think that it got better through the years. The Mark 1, then the Mark 2 was slightly better than Mark 1, and Mark 3, yes, the best one. Mark 4's started to get a bit more complicated. And again, like the Mark III Focus that followed the Mark 3, the Mark 4 Mondeo, it kind of went along the same lines. I don't like them. I personally think they went too over the top, and they tried to make it into. I mean, they tried to do the Aston Martin style grille on all of them at one point. All three cars, and I just think, oh god, they're trying to be luxurious. Ford had clearly decided after about 2010 to start going all luxurious. And yeah, okay, you know, they've tried to put luxurious touches on in the past, like, you know, chrome strips on the gear models, and, you know, leather seats, and, you know, this fake wood that you get everywhere. But it was Ford in a nice, a really luxurious but tacky way. But people loved them for that, because they weren't pretending to be luxurious. They were just what they were. But these cars, they were trying to push them up market desperately, and adding the tech and making them even more complicated and even more expensive to actually repair, and less reliable. And they all went the same way. I just think, stop pretending to be Mercedes. You're not going to be Mercedes. You're Ford. That for me is why the Mark III Mondeo, the Mark 1 Focus, I'd say the Mark 5 Fiesta. I'm not as a massive fan of them, but I think they handle really well. And I think all three cars, they were designed at roughly the same time, um, and they have a lot of the design philosophies of each other. And you can see the thought and the creative design when designers are allowed to go and say, right, this is a clean sheet, we're starting from scratch. And you can see the feeling. Ford Ka, the original Ford Ka, brilliant car. If only they made it a little bit better, but then again, they wouldn't have been so cheap if they'd have put about 20p of rust killer on it. Um, so, you know, that's for me where Ford started to go wrong. That's your basis, really. Um, and I honestly do. If you're talking about the last great Fords ever made, I think the Mark 1 Focus is the number one, because there's no other car that you can compare it to. I really don't think any of the other Focuses that follow the Mark 2, then they're just not as good. As I say, the Mark 4 Focus is the Mark 4 Focus, the Mark 7, the current Focus and Fiesta, the Mark 7 Fiesta, and the Mark 4 Focus lost it. I was really anxious to see the Mark 4 Focus when they started releasing pictures of what it was supposed to look like. And as soon as I saw the back end of it, what are they doing? Are they trying to copy BMW by being a 1 Series? Have you seen the back end of it? It doesn't look like a Focus. It's lost its integrity whatsoever. The Mark 3 Focus, I have to say, it does look like a Focus. The shape of it, bigger car, but it's the shape they got right. The back end of it with the higher lights, I like it. Okay, it wasn't the trapezoid rear lights of the Mark 2 and Mark 1, but they kind of work within the parameters of what they had to work. I mean, obviously there was a bit of EU legislation kicking high-level lights out, and they all dropped this idea. But they worked around it, and actually it doesn't look too bad a car, Mark 3, but it's just the whole car as a whole, it lost that special touch. And for me, that is why keeping so many Mark 1s on the road is so important, because quite frankly, when they are vanished, you're going to be seriously lacking options. I don't think this drive, I think the drive towards electric cars is pushing everything up anyway. But I seriously, Ford have gone exactly the same way as every single car manufacturer in making these hideous SUVs. I mean, they are hideous. I mean, my ex, she said, well, that's what people buy. That, you know, how can you say that they're ugly? Because somebody obviously doesn't think they're ugly. I just think that's not why people buy cars. That you're missing the point. Cars are literally practical A to B boxes now. I mean, they always have been seen in that way, but for some reason, people have cottoned on to the idea that we all need to drive like in mini Range Rovers and have about 10 foot of metal where you can barely see out. It's like peering through a letterbox with the size of the A, B, and C pillars these days. In fact, you might as well just get rid of the back window. They're so small. Range Rover Evokes started that really badly, and then everybody's copied that model now, and people just keep buying these shit boxes. I mean, honest to God, oh, it drives me potty. Does it drive you potty? Because it does with me. Point is though, is it going to continue? No. SUVs are going to go completely the way of the wind. Trust me, 5-6 years time, everybody will be ditching them and buying the latest thing. And I'll tell you what the latest thing actually could be, estates. Because if you've seen the styling of some of these SUVs, they're actually styled a little bit more longitudinally, like fastbacks. They look more like estates than anything else. And I do think that people's desire for ultimate practicality and space within a car, they're going to start looking at these SUVs and thinking, no, I don't like this no more. It's a trend and people get bored of trends. And unfortunately, cars, I don't think cars have necessarily been this through the years. There have been changes where there's a lot more trendy styles, but I do think that cars are now completely gone the way of trends. I mean, literally, you wear one piece of clothing one year and it's out of date the next, and cars are exactly the same now. But it used to be that way back in the day, but it used to be several years. Now it's like within 12 months. And on that basis, these SUV are not going to be on the road for too much longer. So we can actually praise and share a glass to the end of those hideous cars, hopefully by 2030. Well, yeah, it could be about that. The trends, these SUV trends, I'm so disappointed that Ford just could not think outside the box and be more original. I mean, the fact is, the Ford Explorer, which is going to be sold in Europe. I don't know what a Ford Explorer is. It's an American car, not a European car. I'm not, as I say, if you're from America, don't take offense whatsoever. I just don't know what it is. It's like, I don't know, bringing one of... I'm trying to think of a car now that Ford make that they don't sell in America, because I'm thinking the Focus is sold in America. There's quite a few. But imagine you having a car with a name from Europe, but you don't know what it is. Why would you do that? There's no brand awareness for this car. Ford just completely ripping things up. There was actually a video that I watched, JM on Cars. Are you subscribed to him? Because I love his channel. I think it is so, what he achieves with his channel, it's almost like an old-fashioned Top Gear style show. He's definitely mimicked a bit of Clarkson and the way he used to present things back in the day. But he did a piece about basically where Ford were going and basically all the problems they've had. And this has been kind of on my conscience for quite a few time. I mean, if you're into Fords, you'd probably be well aware of what's been going on, or at least some of the general bigger picture. I don't actually pay attention to the mainstream media because I think it tells you, I think a lot of the mainstream media are made up of people who are actually connected with these companies, and they'll tell you what they want you to hear. So I do a little bit of research. But the part where Ford have announced the Ford Explorer and a couple of new models going forward, particularly being all electric vehicles, the actual CEO actually wrote a letter. I think it was more of a, I shall put it, a more of a promotion of their new vehicles and the direction the company was going. It was saying like where we were going and this is where we're heading. And there was a bit of it which said, we are now making vehicles that Ford owners can be proud of. What an absolute... I mean, that is literally so insulting to every single Ford person who goes around wearing, you know, you've got tattoos on your arms of Ford, wearing Ford gear and everything else that comes with it. You know, you go around with a classic Ford Cortina or whatever sort of Ford it is. People love Fords, and that's just an insult. What you've done there, buddy, is you've basically cut every single person that is into Fords and made them alienate against you, because they're not going to buy one of your products now you've said that, because you've basically insulted all the hard work that all the brilliant designers like Richard Perry Jones that gave us the MK1 Focus. You've insulted every single person who has ever worked for you by saying that one thing. Was he not prepared for that statement? Did someone not look at that and think, you can't say that? That is just madness. And that's where Ford are going, completely down the toilet. So on that really dreary conclusion, Ford, the new Rover, yeah, I can see Ford going down the pan like Rover in Europe. They will exist as a company. They're a huge company. Um, they're quite astute. They know what they're selling, but I suspect that in Europe things are not going to go well. They are late to the EV party. I'm not a fan of EVs, but everyone has noticed how slow they have been, how slow they have been in compared with other manufacturers. I don't know whether that's a good and a bad thing, but they are gearing up for the EV drivetrains, and they are being made in this country. But is it too late? And are they appealing to a market which is so dwindling they cannot compete further? I think the Germans need to be worried about the Chinese. I think Ford need to be worried about the Germans. And that's how much trouble Ford are possibly in. If you look at the sales figures, they're not comparable with the Germans, and the Germans are struggling. That's really bad. So on this dwindling conclusion, well, it's not really a conclusion, but it puts it in perspective of how important the Mark 1 Focus is as an example of what Ford could do at their absolute peak. And I would say absolute peak. I'm not like, I haven't got rose tinted glasses because I love Mark 1s and I think, oh, they're amazing, they're the best thing ever. You give me a car that's had more influence in European life. I mean, not just UK life, European life than the Mark 1 Focus with a Ford badge or any badge. Because in 1959, there was a very clever man called Alec Izagonis, and he was given a clean sheet design, a blank sheet of paper. And he basically designed the Mini with a team of very clever people who designed possibly the greatest liberator of a car ever. Arguably, the 2CV is bigger. The Beetle, again, big. What connects all these three cars? These are the three cars that stand out, by the way. They were all clean sheet designs. They carried no carryovers from any cars ever. The Mark 1 Focus is a clean sheet design. So therefore, I put it in that category and that category only. That's your four great cars. And it's my job to promote this car as much as possible. And I hope that the community grows as such. I can only do what I can only do from my YouTube channel, which is a tiny, tiny channel in an ocean of millions of YouTube channels, where I am going to be going to the NEC Classic Restoration Show. Hopefully, if this actually goes out tonight, and I hope it will. And I will be seeing millions of fantastic cars amongst millions of different YouTubers. In fact, I suspect that almost everyone seems to have started a YouTube channel these days, because that is all I've seen at shows recently. So lots of lovely content for everyone. And it is nice to actually have people's opinions, because all you need is a phone camera, a smartphone. That's all you need. That's all you need. And a tripod. That's all you need. And enthusiasm. And you have to keep at it. It's hard. It's very hard. You're up against a lot of people. Well, I'm not competing. By the way, I'm not competing with other YouTubers. I can't compete with other YouTubers. All I can do is add content that I think is different and interesting to the people that I want to watch my videos. I'm not trying to cater for millions of people. I'm not trying to be, how should I put it, politically correct. I'm not saying things that people want to hear sometimes. Those are for the YouTubers that want to grow their channel and basically, well, grow their channel as much as possible and get the maximum amount of viewers by saying very little that could be considered controversial. Me, well, I don't mind saying what I think, and I intend for the channel to be a very strong and stern channel in that respect, because I am a completely opinionated. And no, I will not. I am not. I have not been drinking before I made this video, but I thought there was a few things that I've seen the last few days that have really sparked me a little bit about how important it is to promote these cars, because they will just be, they'll be gone. They'll be gone if people don't start working on them and put a few pounds into them, because quite frankly, there's enough wastage as it is. And I think car ownership, and this is a subject for another day, is going to be extremely expensive in about 10 years time. Whether you are trying to hang on to an old petrol car like mine, and probably the one you've got now, or you've jumped on the EV bandwagon and you are paying through the nose through finance or leasing, either way, you're going to be out of pocket, and it's a shocking shame the way it's going, but that is the way it is. So I hope that this episode hasn't been too much of a ramble, but I'm hoping to go to, well, I am going to the NEC Classic Motor Show tomorrow. If any of you are going, please feel free not to talk to me whatsoever, because I am busy. I'm only joking. I will be going around with my camera. I hope that you'll be able to hear me, because I haven't yet got a Rode. It's a Rode wireless I'm looking for at a reasonable price. I have, however, bought this little thing, which means it's basically I can hold my phone instead of holding it like this. This is really nasty. When you're doing this, your fingers get like repetitive strain injury from holding your camera. But this is quite nice. In fact, there's actually a little spirit level on it. This can actually be attached to a tripod, or it can be used as a stick, and I'll be using this. And I will try and keep it close to my mouth like a little microphone. So if you see a guy just wandering around like he's John Motson, that's the guy you need to talk to. So yeah, I'll be going and I'll be showing you exactly how little I know about certain classic cars, but knowing some about others. I love the Classic Restoration Show because it shows cars being worked on. Saturday's the best day to go, in my opinion. Fridays Fridays are quiet. There's just as much going on, but Saturday's where it really picks up. And I hope to show you quite a few what they've got. Apparently the show is a little bit smaller this year, but I'm not sure why that is. There's less halls from what I've spotted, so that'll be an interesting one. And I was actually going to take the bus because, quite frankly, the parking is a little bit on the steep side, and I've got the advantage of being right next to the NEC. But as it happens, the bus drivers are on strike, so I will be driving. So yeah. Anyway, you take care, guys. I will see you very soon in another ramble. Yeah, pretty much. You take care, guys. I will see you very soon. Look after yourself.